I am Seiji Tanaka. Now I am just an old man, but once I was a name known in the darkness of Osaka. Showa 30, 1955. Japan was still raw with the scars of war, and in both Tokyo and Osaka, new desires swirled over the burnt ruins. My life, I can say, began in that crucible of desires, in Nishinari's slum district. I never knew my parents. I was picked up in what was then called the Shitty-ku, designated zone, a lawless area where even the police hesitated to step. It was a place of black markets, gambling dens, prostitution, and the illicit trade of goods left by the occupying forces. The first things I learned were the look in the eye and the guts necessary for survival, before learning how to greet anyone. At 15, I knocked on the door of the Sawada Gumi, a low-ranking faction of what would later become the Sanogumi Syndicate. The boss was Tatsuo Sawada. He was slender and short, but his eyes glowed like embers, and no one dared speak when he stared. The boss called me into the back room and asked, "What can you do?" "Nothing," I answered honestly. I knew from an old book I'd read that in the Yakuza world, that was the greatest sign of Ninkyo, chivalrous spirit. Sawada boss smiled softly and offered me a cigarette. "If you can't do anything, then learn only how to die. The most valuable thing in this world is not your life, but the boss's face." That was my first lesson as a Yakuza. The Sawada Gumi was the most aggressive, most warrior faction within the Sanogumi, which was rapidly expanding its power across the Kansai region. As a kobun, protégé, every day passed in violence and tension. Sake, tobacco, and the dosu, dagger, always hidden deep in my waistband. In our world, the thickness of finger joints and the number of scars spoke louder than words. Showa 40, 1965. The wave of rapid economic growth began to change the Yakuza world. Black market interests transformed into legitimate construction and finance, requiring calculators and suits, not just daggers and guns. But I was drawn to the old world of Ninkyo. One day, a large-scale Koso gang war erupted between the Sawada Gumi and a rival faction from the Inabakai Syndicate in Kobe's port. It was over control of a waterfront warehouse. Sawada boss calmly said, "Seiji, you are still young. But since you have received the Sakazuki, Seki Cup of Brotherhood, there is no escape. If the boss's blood is spilled, you will pay with more than just a finger." I put the pistol I had just been taught to use into my pocket. The cold metal felt strangely comfortable, a feeling similar to the relief of having come to a point of no return. The fighting at the port was hell. It was raining. There was no cinematic beauty, just brutal slaughter. Shouts, the dull sound of steel pipes hitting flesh and red blood spreading in the puddles. I lunged at the Inabakai member with a sense of being disconnected from myself. The man was huge. My thin arms should have snapped easily, but the boss's words echoed in my head. "Learn only how to die." In the pouring rain while grappling, I pulled out the pistol, pressed it against his abdomen and pulled the trigger. A dry bang. And then, the man lost all strength, like a puppet whose strings were cut. As he collapsed onto the asphalt, a mixture of rain and blood flowed from his eyes. My life perhaps ended right there. As I left the scene, I saw the boss standing quietly. Without looking at my face, he simply ordered the crew, "Dispose of it." Back at the office, I was made to sit seiza, formal kneeling, before the boss. He calmly placed a Japanese sword on the floor and sat across from me. "Seiji, you have killed a man, and you did it for me. This is your life's cross." The boss then pointed to my right pinky finger. "But having shouldered this cross, you are no longer just a punk. You are my blood brother." That night, Sawada boss gave me the Sakazuki. It was a blood oath of the Showa Yakuza, boss and protege and brothers. It was a ritual to become a fated community, stronger than family. The hot sake burned my throat. The taste, a mix of blood and the premonition of the hell that was to come, is unforgettable. After the exchange, the boss put his arm around my shoulder and said, "Seiji, from now on, you will be my light." "Light," he said. All I felt was that I was plunging into absolute darkness, but the boss's words became the only bond keeping me tethered to this world. I rapidly ascended within the organization as Wakagashira, First Lieutenant, to Sawada boss. My strength lay in the coexistence of calmness and brutality, the courage to get my hands dirty without hesitation, and the cold heart that felt nothing afterward were highly valued here. However, by the Showa 50s, 1975s, the entire Yakuza world began to change. The police's summit operations and the maturation of the economy marked the end of the old Ninkyo era, replaced by corporatization and efficiency. Sawada Boss also shifted the group's operations from gambling and protection to real estate and bill discounting. New money cooled the old blood and thinned the bond between brothers. As the boss became obsessed with new money, a certain loneliness crept into my heart. What I sought was not money, but that blood oath, the spirit of Ninkyo. Ninkyo is dead. That's what the old cadres of the Sawada Gumi whispered. They were jealous of the smell of new money the boss was building upon the blood of the man I had killed. Around that time, I met a man, Kenji Osawa. He became my shate, junior brother. In contrast to me, he was always smiling, a cheerful man. But beneath that smile, I knew he harbored a darkness as deep as mine. He might have been the symbol of the new era's Yakuza, a ruthless realist who would stop at nothing for money. Osawa quickly struck gold in the territory the boss had assigned me. He scorned the old Ninkyo codes, efficiently using violence and money when needed. I found him dangerous, yet was fascinated by his talent. He possessed the forward-moving force I was losing. However, I didn't yet know that this talent would become the prelude to a betrayal that would rock the entire syndicate. My life's crucial decisions were always made on a rainy night, a weather that seemed to mirror the darkness in my heart. The next development would be the triangular conflict between me, Osawa, and Sawada Boss. The collision of the old Ninkyo soul and the ruthless capitalism of the new era, and my fate at the center of it all. That story would reach its definitive climax on the night my right pinky finger was severed. Kenji Osawa had been my junior brother for 3 years. Under my protection, he rapidly struck a gold mine. His methods were thorough. He ignored old gambling and stall interests, focusing on land flipping, fraudulent bill discounting, and investing in the sex industry using young women. All were things scorned as Gedo, evil path, by the old Yakuza, but the cash flow was tremendous. Every Sawada Gumi member began to bow before him. Brother, Ninkyo is a starvation aesthetic. In this era, money is justice. Osawa would say this, drinking the sake in front of me. I couldn't argue. Even the boss was satisfied with the huge Jonakin tribute money Osawa brought, turning a blind eye to his unethical methods. The boss's office was filled with antiques he had started collecting, and his face had changed from one of fierce bloodthirst to that of a greasy merchant. I felt the blood oath between the boss and me crumble audibly. My job became controlling Osawa's rampages and suppressing the dissatisfaction of the members he trampled. Osawa was the brains, but I was the symbol of violence and the arbiter. My presence barely maintained the equilibrium of the Sawada Gumi. Showa, 55, 1980. The head of the Sano Gumi, that is Sawada Boss's Oyakata, fell ill. This signaled a turning point for the entire organization, the start of a war. Under the surface, Yakuza across Kansai began a bloody power struggle for the position of the next chairman. Sawada Boss was aiming for the rank of highest executive. For that, he needed power, money, and loyalty. Sawada Boss called me in. Seiji, I'm aiming for the position of Wakagashira Hosa, junior boss assistant, of the Sano Gumi. I need you to be the Teppodama, bullet hitman for that. The boss ordered me to assassinate Ryuji Kishima, the leader of the rival Kishima Gumi. The Kishima Gumi was an old-school martial faction that openly criticized the boss's corporate Yakuza methods. Crushing Kishima would make the boss's position unshakable. Boss, that doesn't follow the code. Kishima Boss is a man you were once indebted to. Furthermore, if blood is spilled within the Sanogumi now, the group will split. For the first time, I objected to the boss's order. The Ninkyo soul inside me wouldn't allow it. In the Yakuza code, repaying an obligation with betrayal was the most shameful act. Sawada Boss looked at me with cold eyes, devoid of the fire he had when he gave me the blood sake years ago. Seiji, are you still chasing old dreams? Code? The code is what the winner creates. You are my kobun. Do it silently. At that moment, Osawa, standing behind the boss, spoke softly. Brother, the boss is right. The old era is over. Kishima Boss is a living liability. Our job is to settle the accounts. Osawa's words pierced my heart like an ice blade. He treated everything I valued like trash. I sensed a conspiracy between the boss and Osawa. The boss was using me to do the dirty work, while simultaneously viewing me as a tool to be discarded if my old Ninkyo spirit got in the way. The night of the assassination. I lay hidden in the rain on the hill behind Kishima boss's residence. Rain, again. My life's crucial moments are always drenched. As I held the pistol, I questioned myself. Why did I enter this world? Loyalty to Sawada boss, or to protect the dying soul of Ninkyo? Kishima boss walked past me without an umbrella. He was alone. No guards, just walking openly as if he knew his fate. That image was the very Ninkyo figure I wanted to see in Sawada boss. I couldn't pull the trigger. I stood there for hours, pistol raised, drenched in the rain. When I collapsed to my knees, drained of all strength, I understood my defeat. I couldn't become this new era Yakuza, and yet, as an old era Yakuza, I couldn't defy the boss. I returned to the office and knelt before Sawada boss. Boss, I couldn't do it. The boss smiled calmly, as if he had been waiting for those words. His face showed victory, not disappointment. I see, Seiji. You chose the old code over the blood of parent and child. The next moment, Osawa hit me from behind. A blunt force like a heavy object split my head with pain. As my consciousness faded, I heard Sawada boss's cold voice. Osawa, finish him, and bring me his finger. Let the crew see the fate of a traitor. I saw Osawa's laughing face and the boss's vacant expression one last time. When I woke up, I was in a ruined warehouse. My hands were tied and my mouth was gagged, and my right pinky finger was severed. I knew the ritual of yubitsume, finger cutting. It is a form of apology and atonement. But my yubitsume was a punishment, a brand of exile. Osawa dangled the bloody pinky finger in front of my face. Brother, that's too bad. You were outdated. This finger will be the best souvenir for the boss. He spat on my face and closed the warehouse door. Showa 55, 1980. I fell from Wakagashira of the Sanogumi to a loner with no finger, betrayed by my boss and cut off by my junior brother. The Osaka streets, silent after the storm, spread out before me as I left the warehouse. The city's neon lights shone brightly, as if mocking my lost glory. I was no longer Yakuza, but I had to settle the Yakuza code, the ultimate judgment, revenge on Sawada boss and Kenji Osawa, and the final fight to reclaim my Ninkyo soul began here. I had no finger, but I had life, and I still had a code of honor to risk this life for. Osawa's death shocked the Sawada-gumi and the Sano-gumi. The boss publicly announced it as an assassination by a rival organization, but everyone inside knew it was retribution. That I, the man with no right pinky finger, was alive in the darkness of Osaka. However, the boss focused all his energy on securing the position of Wakagashira Hosa in the Sano-gumi, rather than hunting me down. Protecting the interests he acquired with Osawa's money and skill was his primary concern. He completely abandoned the old Ninkyo codes and became just an old merchant obsessed with money and power. We used Sachi's network to anonymously send the information from Osawa's notebook to the anti-Sawada faction of the Sano-gumi's highest executives. The contents: proof of Sawada boss's private embezzlement of syndicate funds, records of illegal donations to police executives, etc., were decisive evidence sufficient to dethrone a boss. The silent poison began to take effect slowly but surely. At syndicate meetings, voices of distrust and criticism against Sawada boss arose. In particular, the command to assassinate Kishima boss ignited the rage of the old Ninkyo bosses. They saw Sawada boss as having sold the spirit of Ninkyo for money and began to openly impeach him. Sawada boss started to panic. To protect his status, he began cutting off his former comrades one after another. He expelled the dissidents and tried to seize the rival faction's territories through violence. His actions became increasingly dictatorial, making the internal split definitive. Meanwhile, I was hiding in a small apartment in a back street of Kobe. It was close to the place where I first killed a man on a rainy night. Every day I was tormented by the smell of the sea and guilt. Revenge gave me cold satisfaction but not soul salvation. I was trying to wash away the filth of blood by shedding blood, but I was beginning to realize it was impossible. My heart was sinking deep into darkness. Seiji-san. The boss is finished, Shibata said when he came to my hideout one night. His face showed deep sorrow. He was the boss's first loyal kobun and couldn't forgive his moral decay. The boss plans to kill us as traitors for a show of force. We have no time left. Shibata placed an old pistol in front of me. The syndicate's final judgment must be washed in the blood of parent and child. That is Ninkyo. I picked up the pistol. Cold, heavy. It was different from the one I used to kill years ago, but it smelled of the same death. Shibata, this is a murder between parent and child. I cannot involve you. What are you saying, Seiji-san? I joined this group for the boss and for Ninkyo. The current boss is not my boss. As your shate, I will see the final judgment through to the end. Looking into Shibata's strong eyes, I couldn't say anything. We were the last comrades who had seen the same dream and experienced the same betrayal. The day of the final battle, autumn of Showa 57, 1982. The location was a hidden mansion deep in the Osaka mountains, which Sawada boss used for secret meetings. The boss suspected his life was in danger and had tightly guarded the place. Shibata and I, along with Miyamoto and Sachi, who provided intelligence. 4 of us against dozens of Yakuza. I was prepared to die. Rather, I believed that this death match would be atonement for my sins. We infiltrated from the back of the mansion. Climbing the mountain path, I remembered the face of the old boss. The face of the strict yet kind man who gave me a way to live, and the bloodsake. Boss, I am coming to kill you, but it is not betrayal. It is a requiem for the Ninkyo you killed. A silent monologue echoed in my heart. As soon as we infiltrated the mansion, fighting broke out. Gunshots and shouts tore through the silence of the mountains. Shibata, using his experience as a former kamikaze pilot, calmly took down the enemy. Driven by the flames of revenge, I headed straight for the boss's room. I took down many Yakuza. With each one, my heart grew heavier. They were only following the boss's orders. They too were victims of this corrupt organization. I kicked open the door to the boss's room. Inside, Sawada boss was waiting, accompanied by guards. The boss looked at my fingerless right fist and sneered. Seiji, you finally came, traitor. Are you going to deliver my final judgment? There was no pathos in the boss's words, only arrogance and a madness that believed in his own justice. Boss, I am going to kill you, but it is because you betrayed Ninkyo. My blood oath was to the spirit of Ninkyo, not to you drowned in money. I pointed the pistol at the boss's forehead. Let's settle the judgment, boss. The boss smiled wickedly. Seiji, I taught you to kill and to survive, but I will teach you one last thing. There is no Ninkyo in this world. There is only power and money. Shouting this, the boss used a guard as a shield and leapt at me. His eyes burned with final desperation. I pulled the trigger. A dry gunshot. Blood splattered onto the wall's expensive hanging scroll. Sawada boss collapsed at my feet. His face was filled with surprise, not agony. He may have never believed I would kill him, even until the very end. I stood motionless before the boss's corpse. Revenge was achieved. But there was no feeling of victory in my heart, only deep silence and emptiness. I had thrown away my entire life into this sea of blood. Outside the mansion, Shibata's gunshot stopped. Was he alive or dead? I escaped the mansion, leaving behind the corpse and the evidence. My life, the moment I killed the boss, advanced to the Yuran next stage, from revenger to wanted killer, and to the ghost of Ninkyo. My story is not over. I survived, carrying sin and nihilism. Sawada boss's death marked the end of an era in the Showa underworld. The Sanogumi collapsed at once due to the evidence of corruption in Osawa's notebook and the boss's untimely death. Anti-Sawada bosses moved to seize control, and the group entered a period of bloody internal strife. My revenge, in the form of a silent poison of organizational self-destruction, was fully accomplished. I became a wanted murderer, spending my days fleeing from police pursuit. After escaping the mansion, I chose separate paths from Shibata, Miyamoto, and Sachi. Shibata, acting as my shate to the end, headed in another direction to confuse the pursuit. Miyamoto secretly sent a copy of Osawa's notebook to the police, attempting to permanently preserve the evidence. Sachi quietly dissolved into the darkness of Osaka. I don't know what happened to them, and I chose not to know. I felt my fate was too heavy to involve them any further. Parting was more painful than death. I changed my name and appearance, wandering through Japanese provincial cities. I earned small amounts of cash as a gambler in the dens and sweated as a day laborer at the ports. Once a month, I bought a newspaper at Sachi's designated spot, checking the news of the Sanogumi. Every time I read about the group's division and decline, a mixture of cold satisfaction and deep loneliness was present in my heart. I was no longer Ninkyo or Yakuza, just a fugitive, A ghost of the past. Showa 58, 1983. I reached a desolate fishing village in Hokkaido. The winter sea was leaden, and only the sound of the waves seemed to speak to my lonely soul. One day I was working on unloading cargo at the small fishing port. The rough waves and cold sea wind slapped my cheeks. At that moment, I found I couldn't remember my former self. Bloodsake, violence, betrayal, revenge, it all felt like a distant dream. I was lost to myself. The man named Seiji Tanaka had died with Sawada Boss's death. That night, I shared drinks with an old fisherman at a small bar in the village. The fisherman was missing one finger. He said he lost it when it got caught in a net. I quietly hid my fingerless right fist under the table. The fisherman talked about losing a finger with no emotion, as if it were the most natural thing. A finger is just decoration. What matters is the strength to pull the net with the fingers you have left. Those words pierced my heart sharply. I had made the lost pinky finger a symbol of my entire life. Ninkyo, loyalty, betrayal, revenge. But to this fisherman, a finger was just a tool. I felt like crying. It was the tears of release, not sorrow. I had been imprisoned by the old Yakuza code and the glory and humiliation of the past. What happened to you? You have lonely eyes, the fisherman said, looking at my eyes. I couldn't answer. This sea will wash everything away. If you don't want to be washed away, you have no choice but to pull the net with the strength you have left. That night, for the first time, I was able to face myself. I had to be freed from the ghost of Seiji Tanaka, to live and atone. I left the fishing village. The journey of revenge was over. From now on, it was the journey of atonement. I never spoke of my past to anyone. The blood sake, the yubitsume, the sin of murder, that was my cross alone. I headed to Tokyo, to live out the rest of my life in the center of Japan, where a new era was about to begin, as the Showa era drew to a close. Arriving in Tokyo, I began a new life as a day laborer in construction. By the Showa 60s, 1985s, Japan was plunging into the frenzy of the bubble economy. The underworld I knew no longer bore the shadow of old Ninkyo, having transformed into an even colder, more invisible world, where huge sums of money moved through stocks and real estate. The neon lights of Shinjuku far surpassed those of Osaka. Their light shone brightly as if mocking my dark past. I used the alias Takada. No one knew my past. Even when they saw my fingerless right hand, everyone assumed it was a work accident. That was both relief and deep loneliness, because there was no one left who knew Seiji Tanaka. I worked silently at the construction site's barracks, shedding sweat. Physical fatigue was the only thing that could temporarily make me forget the pain in my heart. One day, a police officer came to the barracks to investigate the hiding of Yakuza affiliates. My heart froze instantly. I thought about running, but I did not run. There was no point in running. My sins would not be erased by fleeing. The officer checked my ID and looked at my fingerless right hand. What happened to your finger? Yakuza's judgment. The officer's sharp eyes pierced me. I calmly told a lie. No, it was an accident. It was caught in a steel beam. The officer looked at my eyes for a few seconds. I did not look away. I put a truth within the lie, that my life as a Yakuza was an accident caught in the heavy sin of a steel beam. The officer sighed and walked away from me. Keep up the good work, be honest. I stood rooted to the spot. I saved my life. But it wasn't because I fled. It might have been that my silent intent to abandon the past and live a new life was conveyed. I chose to live. That is a more painful path than death. It means fighting the ghosts of the past every day. In that life, I met one woman, Yoko Kasuga, the owner of a small coffee shop. She knew nothing of my past. She took my silence as serenity and my fingerless right hand as a scar of life. For the first time, I experienced human warmth, completely unrelated to the Yakuza code or the flames of revenge. The aroma of the coffee she brewed was filled with kindness, completely different from the smell of blood and tobacco I was used to. I was attracted to her, but I could not get close. I was a murderer, a ghost of the past. I knew that if I touched her, I would contaminate her pure life. I watched her from afar as a regular customer of the coffee shop. Her smile was the only light for me. One day, I decided, either I would tell her everything or I would disappear from her sight. On the final night, I sat in the backmost seat of the coffee shop. Yoko placed coffee in front of me. "Takada-san, thank you always. You seem to have something on your mind." Yoko said this, looking at my eyes. I was speechless. Her pure kindness was beginning to melt my frozen heart. I have something I must tell you. I was about to confess my past. Sanogumi, Sawada boss Osawa, blood sake, yubitsume, and murder. Everything. At that moment, the door opened. 2 men entered the coffee shop. They were wearing worn suits and had sharp eyes. They saw my face and smiled wickedly. "Seiji, brother, it's been a while." That voice was not Shibata or Miyamoto. They were Sanogumi remnants, the ones trying to blame me for the group's division because I killed the boss. My past had come to catch me again. Yoko was frozen in fear. I stood up and stood in front of her. "Yoko-san, run!" Those were my last words to her. My atonement was not permitted in a quiet life. The code of blood can only be cleared with life. I clenched my fingerless right fist. I had no weapon, but the fighting spirit remained. My judgment is different from yours. The final fight began quietly in a corner of Tokyo. As the ghost of a Showa Yakuza, I accepted my fate. The small space of the coffee shop instantly became a battlefield. The 2 Sanogumi remnants took out pistols and aimed them at me. Their faces were a mix of hatred and satisfaction at having caught me. "Seiji, thanks to you, the group is a mess. You will pay for that responsibility with your life," I silently said, shielding Yoko behind my back. "The one who ruined the group was the boss, blinded by money, and you yourselves who followed him. I only settled the Ninkyo judgment." "Shut up. Don't spout old words like Ninkyo and judgment. You are just a traitor." The men placed their fingers on the triggers. I was prepared for death. A pistol versus bare hands is no contest. But I would not run. I would settle the judgment in this place. Then something unbelievable happened. Yoko, from behind me, spoke softly. "Stop it, please." She was trembling, but her voice held firm will. "This person has done nothing. He is important to me. Don't touch him." The men were dumbfounded. They hadn't expected a civilian to interfere in a Yakuza conflict. "Get back, woman. This is our problem." One of the men tried to push Yoko away. I did not miss that momentary opening. With my fingerless right fist, I struck the man's face with a full-force punch. My fist, trained by years of construction work, was as hard as iron. The man screamed and collapsed. The other man was too surprised to pull the trigger quickly. I snatched the pistol from the fallen man and aimed it at the other man. "Don't move, this is my fight. The woman has nothing to do with it." The man was frozen in fear. I threw the pistol onto the floor and, without a glance at the man, took Yoko's hand. "Let's go." I fled the coffee shop with Yoko. Not carrying a pistol was a judgment. I would not kill again. I would risk my life to live a new life. We ran through the streets of Tokyo. The neon lights reflected off the rain, making it blinding. My escape continued, but this time I was not alone. I had someone to protect. Her existence was the only light that illuminated the darkness of my past. I told Yoko everything: my name, my past as a Yakuza, the yubitsume, and the sin of murder. Everything. Yoko listened quietly to my words. She didn't shed tears, but only looked into my eyes. After I finished, she gently held my fingerless right hand. "Seiji-san, your past will not disappear, but I love you. Let's live together. Atonement is something that can be done while alive." That word completely melted my frozen heart. Human love, not Ninkyo or revenge, was my final salvation. I left Tokyo with Yoko, to live a new life under a new name in a place no one knew. The police are probably chasing me. The Sanogumi remnants are probably targeting me. The fugitive life may continue forever, but I am no longer afraid. The lost pinky finger is the proof of my past sins, but the 4 remaining fingers are the strength to live with Yoko. The Showa era has ended. The new Heisei era is just around the corner. My life as a Yakuza closed its curtain with the darkness of Showa. "Yoko, thank you." I tightly grasped her hand. "My long confession ends here. To live and atone. That is the last Ninkyo remaining for Seiji Tanaka, the former Yakuza with no finger." The rain was falling softly. A quiet, gentle rain, different from the rain of blood of that night.